Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning I'm going to be reading some excerpts from Genesis 18 and 19 and from Ezekiel 16. And I want to read a little intro before I do the readings. How do we open ourselves to understandings of Scripture that critique entire cultures, including our own? How do we open our ears so we can hear a well-known story and let go of preconceived interpretations, which have been very convenient for the powerful, the establishment? In preparation for what our guest speaker will share this morning, I invite you to hear the words from Genesis 18 and 19, followed by a statement from the ancient prophet Ezekiel. The Lord appeared to Abraham while he sat at the entrance of his tent in the day's heat. He looked up and suddenly saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from his tent entrance to greet them and bowed deeply. He said, "Sirs, if you would be so kind, don't just pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought so you may wash your feet and refresh yourselves under the tree. Let me offer you a little bread so you will feel stronger, and after that you may leave your servant and go on your way, since you have visited your servant." They responded, "Fine, do just as you have said." The men got up from there and went over to look down on Sodom. Then God said, "The cries of injustice from Sodom and Gomorrah are countless, and their sin is very serious." The 2 messengers entered Sodom in the evening. Lot, who was sitting at the gate of Sodom, saw them, got up to greet them, and bowed low. He said, "Come to your servant's house, spend the night, and wash your feet. Then you can get up early and go on your way." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." He pleaded earnestly with them. So they went with him and entered his house. He made a big meal for them, even baking unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they went to bed, the men of the city of Sodom, everyone from the youngest to the oldest, surrounded the house and called to Lot, "Where are the men who arrived tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may have sex with them." Lot went out toward the entrance, closed the door behind him, and said, "My brothers, don't do such an evil thing." They said, "Get out of the way." And they continued, "Does this immigrant want to judge us? Now we will hurt you more than we will hurt them." They pushed Lot back and came close to breaking down the door. The men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house with them and slammed the door. The men said to Lot, "Who's still with you here? Take away from this place your sons-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and everyone else you have in the city, because we are about to destroy this place. The Lord has found the cries of injustice so serious that the Lord sent us to destroy it." When dawn broke, the messengers urged Lot, "Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here so that you are not swept away because of the evil in this city. This is the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were proud, had plenty to eat, and enjoyed peace and prosperity, but she didn't help the poor and the needy. They became haughty and did detestable things in front of me, and I turned away from them as soon as I saw it."
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have the privilege of introducing our guest, DeAngelique Jackson, who I was lucky to hear speak at one of the Woven Coalition for Justice meetings. As a recent Fresno State graduate, DeAngelique earned her BA in sociology in the fall of 2022. She is a people activator and mobilizer. Though she is not native to Fresno, DeAngelique's lived experiences as a Black American woman, a military kid, and an LGBTQIA youth have ignited within her a passion to advocate for equity and transformative justice wherever she goes. DeAngelique began working full-time at Fresno State in January 2023 and is the interim program coordinator for the Black Student Success Initiative. She is the current vice president of staff for the Fresno State Black Faculty Staff Association. Her most recent accomplishment include being an invited guest of Vice President Kamala Harris at her 2023 Pride reception for esteemed LGBTQ+ organizers throughout the country, becoming a member of the Central Valley's 40 Under 40 class of 2023, serving as the 2021-2022 Fresno State Student Body President, becoming a Bulldog Pride Fund Scholar, receiving the 2020 John D. Welty Award for Community Excellence in Community Service, serving as Faith in the Valley's Community Justice Fellow, serving as the youngest commissioner on Fresno's Commission for Police Reform, and leading Fresno's largest, most peaceful protest, the City of Fresno's Black Lives Matter protest. Above all, DeAngelique is most proud to be a recharting member of the Fresno State NAACP College Chapter, the 2019-2021 chapter president, and the current campus advisor for this organization. Please welcome DeAngelique Jackson.
One, two. Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? I feel so excited to be here with you all today. My name is DeAngelique Jackson. As was shared, I use she, they pronouns. This is my first time speaking in front of a church, in front of a congregation. So I hope that you all are willing and excited to go on this journey with me as I try to explain a little bit to you about my story and why I chose the scripture that I chose to be shared with you today. So as was shared in my bio, I'm a military kid. And my journey to becoming a community organizer is not a complicated one, but it is a full one. Every other year of my life since I was born, I've moved to a new city, and my earliest philosophies in life, I looked at the world through a lens of classism, of rich versus poor, going from some of the most prominent communities to some of the most economically disadvantaged communities. And along the way, I always thought to myself, there's something that can be done. There has to be a will of the people somewhere in these various communities that can change the current. And I decided to become a part of that change. I decided to pursue a life of fighting injustice and of pushing for transformative justice. When I was 12 years old, I wrote this paper for this organization called Do the Right Thing. I wrote about how, from my age, I saw violence popping up in the world and how I felt its secondhand impact influenced me. I was lucky to be one of 50 national finalists to be invited to Washington, D.C., but I was the only, out of 50, I was the only one who had never actually experienced domestic violence firsthand. And I think that experience shaped me in a way that just being in these different communities couldn't have. I remember speaking with other 12-year-olds who were in the system, who were foster youth. I remember speaking to other 12-year-olds who were dealing with parent violence and asking myself, what type of world do I want us to all grow up in? How do I want to empower people my age and myself to be the change that I know we need? This led me down a path of thought that in my senior year of high school, when I graduated, when I was on my way to graduating from Oaks Christian High School in Westlake, California, where when pursuing my capstone project, my research project, I pursued the question of, what is the history of American violence and can it be solved? I'm 26 years old, If you can do the math quickly, that's phenomenal. If not, I'll let you know that means I graduated high school in 2016. This was the year that Donald Trump ran for president. Being at Oaks Christian, I had transferred there the year prior, and it was my first time being at a private Christian school. It was my first time having to engage with religion in this way. We were going to church once a week. I was in Bible study every day. I had to take theology every semester. So I was constantly addressing these concepts. And it was shocking to me as somebody who growing up addressed the world from this lens of classism, right, of economic disparity, to now see my classmates wearing MAGA hats, talking with me about how my lived experiences as a black person in this country were unfounded, referencing things like slavery was so long ago, what does that have to do with today, right? And so in pursuing this project, the other thing that I found parallel to my classmates and these lived experiences was the history of American violence. Was the journey that America had been on in the creation of its caste system. I got to learn about how America treated black people and what we became for our society. This sent me down this hole, right, of questioning my faith, of questioning my spiritual connection with God. And I think where I came to was I needed to get more involved. I needed to find a way to do more, to ask these questions and confront these racial lines, to confront these classist lines, and see how a world could be created, again, as I've been mentioning, a world could be created that was fit for us all. So I wrote this paper that analyzed the history of American violence, and it ended up being 41 pages in totality. It was something that Oaks Christian had never seen before, a student confronting these concepts and trying to pull these things together. And that's where I really started to address my philosophical foundation. How would I approach these differences? When I came to Fresno State my freshman year, again, 2016, racial tensions were high. This was the first time I came to Fresno was for Dog Days orientation when attending Fresno State. And I think the culture shock from LA and San Diego to the Central Valley was one that again led me down this path of questioning. You'll notice that I tend to question a lot. I tend to think a lot. But I immediately got involved at first with the Fresno State Black Student Union, but I wanted more. I felt I wanted to do something that was politically motivated. I wanted to influence people in that way. So along with two other people, we rechartered the Fresno State NAACP chapter, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This is the oldest civil rights organization in our country, established in 1908 and officially founded in 1909. Going on that journey of joining the NAACP, I became a national civic engagement trainer for them, which means I got to travel the country and again engage with these opposing realities of people. I think those conversations fashioned me into the organizer that I am. Those conversations are what led me to leading the Black Lives Matter protest that we held in our city. But there's still more to be done. And I think once the protest ended, I found myself again questioning, now that we've done this big public act, now that we've said police brutality needs to be addressed, where do we go from here? And what did that actually do? What things did it actually change? It sparked a lot of conversations, but structurally, sociologically, were there changes that made America better, that made Fresno, California better? This led to me changing my major from psychology to sociology, where I could be in a field that would allow me to study these concepts more deeply. And through that journey, I found Faith in the Valley, of whom, as mentioned, I'm a fellow of. And in that experience with Faith in the Valley, recently I was lucky to hear the previous mayor of Stockton, Mayor Tubbs, Michael Tubbs, give a speech at a conference where he referenced the story of Genesis 18 and 19. And this was the first time for me that I'd heard somebody take a story that attacked a very central identity of mine, right? As somebody who identifies as a lesbian person. He took that story and he showed me a different side of it, which is why I felt it was important to come and share with you all today, given that this is a church and how many times am I going to get the opportunity to talk about an interpretation of a very controversial piece, you know? So I thought maybe I should just like try this out. See how they feel about it. And that's because I believe that change happens when you challenge establishments, right? Change happens when you challenge a status quo. And hopefully the story that we referenced in Genesis 18 and 19 is not a shock. Hopefully this is something that you're talking about or you have talked about within your homes and with your families because it's a part of your word. It's a part of the book that you follow, right? But this perspective that he shared when he was speaking, he says, people commonly assume that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah can be reduced down to sexual expression, right? Sexual exploits, homosexuality to be specific. But there's something that's happening in this text that's not only referenced by Ezekiel, but by so many other prophets. I think I read that this story is referenced at least 20 times throughout the Bible. There's something else that's happening here. And that thing that's happening is in hospitality. Their treatment of these angels who have come to visit the cities of Abraham and Lot, it's inhospitable. These strangers approach this community, and without a word, without a welcome, do they ask them as immigrants to give. They don't ask them how they're doing. This mob does not offer them water or a place to stay. They don't inquire about their journey. They ask what they can take from these two angels. And I thought that interpretation of this text was so profound. And here's why. Recently, I saw this movie called Origin. Has anybody heard about this film, Origin, by Ava DuVernay? Have you seen it? Oh my goodness. If there's one call to action, I would say as a church, I would recommend watching this film, to be honest. In this film, I'll try to say it without giving too much, but in this film, basically they address what similarities exist between Black Americans and the untouchables in India. What commonalities do these people share? What do Native Americans share in common with Mexican immigrants or people who identify with the Nation of Islam in this country? It's a conversation about caste systems that are put in place to imprison people and have them do your bidding in order for you to prosper, for your people, your majority's prosperity. It's a common message. It's a common formula. What happened in the Holocaust is not the exact same thing that happened with 400 years of slavery, but the formula is so similar, you almost can't tell where the variables differ. And I think with the story of Abraham and Lot's people, ones that they vouched for before God, where they said there's good that exists here, there becomes a question that God asks. Is the good that exists doing the work to overpower the evil that is established and sustained? You all are a religious body. There are people whom have never stepped foot in your church that will feel the influence of your power because you've decided to congregate for a message of common good. So when there are votes happening with our city council referencing no sit, sleep, or lie laws that impact the unhoused around your area in a city where we've seen homelessness increase and skyrocket, how are you showing up in those conversations? How are you pushing a message of inclusivity, of equity? How are you challenging the status quo of greed and inhospitality? And I think that's the message that I'd want to push today. To ask yourselves, if we're a part of something that's bigger than us, how are we using that to push change within our communities? Or will, as the prophet Zephaniah said to his people, will you face a similar fate as Sodom and Gomorrah? Will we as a society face a similar fate as Sodom and Gomorrah by showing this greed and this inhospitality because we're choosing not to speak up or to address these status quos, these systems of oppression, and enacting change? And so that's the question that I'm trying to answer. That's the message that I'm trying to push. And I hope that that makes sense. I hope that in there's some type of message that you're like, man, that's it. Because this is something that I'm still processing and I'm still trying to figure out in myself and how I work. And I know that there's a lot of things that I've accomplished, but I hope to live my entire life continuing to have conversations like this with as many people as I can, to ask everybody, again, to address these systems, ask these questions, engage with your family members, talk to that person who's made that racist comment or has exhibited these racial tendencies, and challenge them to find the good within their hearts and within their humanity to be better and do better for society. And so with that, I think that's all that I have to share today. I hope that that was all right. I look forward to... Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you all after service and answering any questions or asking any questions that I may have. And thank you so much for this time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, if you're like me, your mind is racing and your heart is pounding. Thank you, DeAngelique. That was really amazing. I wrote down as much as I could as I was still trying to listen. One of the things that struck me was, is the good that exists enough to overpower the evil? Did I get that right? In our city. The other was when she talked about the discussion or the address she heard by Michael Tubbs. Change happens when you challenge the establishment. And I've asked her if she'd be willing to share one story she shared with Kathy and me when we talked with her yesterday, and she said yes. So.
Hi. Happy to be back with you all again. So we had a phenomenal conversation in preparation for the talk that I prepared for you all today. And one of the experiences that I had as a student at Fresno State, rechartering the NAACP and really being full throttle and again challenging that establishment, challenging the establishment that exists, I found myself pushing civic engagement, encouraging young people and everybody, honestly, in my community to register to vote, to understand the propositions, to understand local measures, and to understand the candidates and participate, right? Because if we can get 3 to 5% of a population to vote a certain way, we can influence an entire election. And one of the things that I really held close to my core when pursuing this work with the NAACP was I promised myself I would never tell people how to vote. I would only tell them what was on the ballot, who was on the ballot. I would try to give the most unbiased account of that. And throughout my time tabling and doing voter registration, I had an experience with this organization called Turning Point USA. Some laughs. So if you're unfamiliar, Turning Point USA is an organization that has college chapters throughout the country that push the message of Donald Trump and Make America Great Again. They've even gone so far as to try to position youth on college campus to get into student government in order to tear down those student governments. And when I was doing this work on my campus, Turning Point USA and their members, anytime we set up a table, would be opposite of us. And they would play music, they would shout things, they would tell us that we were being like black nationalists. I don't even know how that's possible if you're a minority in a country, but okay. And all of these things. And it got to a point where they would follow me around campus and would shout things from behind me and let people know, like, she's no good, you know, like, don't be around her. And she's spewing all of this hate, right? When in reality, I'm just telling people there's an upcoming election and you should consider voting. And so finally, on one specific day, I confronted them. I turned around and I asked them, you know, why are you following me? Like, and why are you shouting these things? Like, what have I done that is so egregious that would warrant this type of behavior? And their response was, well, you're a black nationalist. You're trying to push for black superiority in this country. You're trying to push people to vote Democrat and all of these things. And I said, you've been around me for all of this time. Have you ever heard me say you should vote for this candidate or you should vote this way? What makes you think even that I'm a Democrat? What makes you think that? And one of their responses was, well, you're black. It's like, well, let's start there. And so it led us down this conversation where I asked them what they knew about the black experience, and even more importantly, what did they know about my lived experiences and what brought me to this work. And the response that I heard from them was, I've never been to school with a black person. My time at Fresno State was the first time I've really been exposed to a person of color. And, you know, I only know of black people what my family has told me and what I see in the media. And so I know that black people are no good. And I know that you have to be pushing for this ultimatum, right? This ultimate plan. And what I said to them is, how could you live and not challenge these pieces of propaganda, right? The messages from your family about a group that you've never been exposed to, the things that you're seeing on TV. How could you take these messages of propaganda and apply them to me when all this time you could have approached me and gotten to know me? Mm-hmm. And this also led me down another path of introspection, of reflection, where I had to do research and learn that if we're actively segregating our schools, if white people are only living in these white neighborhoods and our education system is not giving an accurate account of the black experience or of any other minoritized group's experience, how could I ever expect my white counterpart to look at me and see me as human? Does that mean that I give them a pass for not seeing me as such? No. But it means I cannot operate from a place of hate because they also don't understand. So when I find myself in situations with somebody who I know is opposed to me, in what ways can I approach them and challenge these? What ways can I engage in a conversation and understand their perspective? Because it only gives me more arsenal to dismantle these systems of oppression, right? And so that was my experience with Turning Point that kind of pivoted. They still continued to follow me and pester me and do all of these things, but I learned to not hate it and instead to become more strategic in how I combated it. So thank you for inviting me to share that, because it was something that was pivotal for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And instead of asking you to go in peace today, I will hope for you that you will go with a little agitation and the question of, where do I take it from here?